Have you ever had one of those conversations where you're both technically speaking the same language, but it's like you're on completely different frequencies? You walk away confused, you're frustrated, thinking, how did that get so messy? Well, this episode explains why. And it's not because either of you are doing it wrong, it's because you're wired differently. Welcome to The Brain Changers, a podcast about learning how to revolutionize the way you think and live by mastering your mind. We're your hosts, mother and daughter duo Rebecca and Yvonne King from Moonbeam Monday. Our goal is to empower you to live the life you choose by teaching you how to retrain your brain. Some people tell us it sounds like mind control, and it is, but not the way you might think. This is about you taking control of your own mind rather than letting your mind control you, so you can choose to live a life free from the expectations of others. No matter what you've experienced in the past, you can create positive change and transformation by learning how to master your mind. We know this because we've done it. Between us, we've survived cancer and stroke and eliminated debilitating anxiety and depression. We've turned our pain into purpose through the power of our mind, and we're now here to support and guide you to do the same. In this podcast, we share valuable insights about how your brain works, why you think, say, and do the things you do, how to begin the process of change, and why it's necessary. Because we know that when you change your mind, you change your life. Thanks for joining us. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the Brain Changers podcast. I'm Rebecca and I'm here with my mum Yvonne. And today we're continuing our series on mastering meaningful communication. Now, in the last episode, we talked about how your brain filters communication through systems like the reticular activating system, or the RAS, and representational styles, and why people often don't hear what you meant to say.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. And today we're going even deeper than last podcast, because if you've ever worked with someone, lived with someone, parented someone, or anything like that, which we all have, then we know that everyone sees the world completely differently to you. So for all of us in that situation, this one's really going to be meaningful and hit home, because today we're talking about meta programs. Now, what are meta programs? Well, these are the unconscious patterns that shape how we think, what we notice, how we behave. You could really liken it to the invisible software that's running in the background of our brain. And they influence absolutely everything from how you make decisions to how you might give feedback to someone or how you personally handle conflict. So in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP as we'll refer to it, meta programs are the mental habits that we use to process our experiences. They're not beliefs or values, they're more like sorting patterns, or maybe we could refer to them as our filing system. So when something happens, when we experience something, our brain asks a series of questions. Should I move toward this or move away from it? Do I care more about this process or the possibilities? Or should I rely on my own standards or someone else's? And that, or those questions and the way our brain responds to that, becomes our default way of dealing with our experiences.
Yes, and the interesting part here is that we usually don't know we're running them. Just like the analogy that you gave a moment ago, the software running in the back of our mind, like a computer, we're sitting here, recording this, or we might be typing. We don't actually know what's going on in the background of the computer unless we're a developer. So we don't actually know that we're running these meta programs. And I guess another analogy you can think of it like this is that we all have a phone, right? So our phone has settings turned on that we never actually chose. Some of them are just, it comes like that. It's already set up. Maybe we don't even know they exist until someone tells us about them. But those settings are running every app in the background. They're collecting data, they're making things happen, but we don't even know about some of them. Now, in the context that we're talking about today, imagine having a conversation with someone whose settings are completely different to yours and
Mm.
you don't even know it. That's when understanding breaks down. We think we're being clear, but something else is getting in the way. So there's lots of meta programs, but we're going to focus on five of the most common today, especially in relationships and workplaces. So I'll give you the first one. And you mentioned this before, Mum, toward versus away from motivation. So what does that actually mean? Well, here we would say, do you move toward goals and outcomes? Or do you focus on avoiding problems, like moving away from the problem? So if you're a toward person, you might say things like, I want to build something amazing. So we're moving toward that thing that we want to build. If you're an away from person, it's more like, I just don't want to fail. Right. So in the workplace, for example, this can create big clashes because one person might be trying to inspire the team with what's possible, and the other's thinking about what could go wrong. And I use this example a lot with clients with the toward and away from. A lot of the people I work with, they come to me because they're struggling with overwhelm and anxiety. And when I ask them, what is it that you want? They say, I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel overwhelmed. But in fact, that is focusing on the problem and trying to move away from it. We obviously do some work to flip that around and say, okay, well, instead, now that we know what you don't want, what is it that you want instead? And let's move toward that because where the focus goes, energy flows.
It's an important delineation, that, isn't it?
Mm.
The second one is the internal versus the external frame of reference. Okay, so what does this mean? So, what it actually means is that where do you get your sense of, I've done a good job, or I'm happy with what I've done? Now, an internal person, they just know they don't need outside validation from partners or their workmates. They have a sense of their own worth and they're happy with what they've done. An external person, they're going to wait for feedback. They want ratings or they want applause or they want recognition for what they've done. Now, I think it's important for us when we're discussing all of these to understand that none is better than another. It's just that they're different.
Mm.
And what we're aiming to do is understand people with different frames of coming to things. So if you are dealing with a person that has an external framework, they are looking for recognition from outside and they don't get any, then they're going to feel totally lost. And likewise, if you give too much unsolicited feedback to an internal person, then they're going to feel micromanaged. And we can see how this could be a really important distinction to be able to make with people, particularly in the workforce.
That's right. And I remember when I learned about this, and even when I've reviewed this
Mm.
recently, it starts to, things that have happened in the past in workplaces have started to make a lot more sense to me, either with people who have managed me or people that I have managed. So it's one of those sort of light bulb moments that you go, okay, if I actually have a think about this and try and map where this person that I'm managing or that's managing me sits, and we actually communicate about this. I let them know what I like or what I need, and vice versa. Then we are going to have a much clearer way of communicating with each other
Yes.
and potentially a better outcome, right?
Mm.
Okay, so number three here, options versus procedures. So this one's about how you approach tasks. Now, options people, they love variety, as the name would suggest. They love brainstorming, they love finding new ways of doing things. Whereas procedures people, as I'm sure is fairly obvious in the word there, they want a system, right? They want steps, they want a proven formula. So if you've ever had a team meeting, for example, where someone's saying, let's just explore a few directions, and another person is quietly panicking because you haven't locked in the plan, then you have seen this particular clash in action. And again, it just so much starts making sense when you understand this. And I suggest next time you're in a team meeting like that, if you've got a situation like that, just start looking around the room and see if people are loving this or if they're quietly sitting there going, uh-oh, you're going to understand a little bit more about options versus
Yeah, if
procedures.
they're uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next important one is sameness versus difference. Now, sameness in people, they notice what's familiar to them and they're comfortable with that. Difference for people, then they're drawn to new things, new horizons, variety, all of that sort of thing. Same people who love the sameness, they want it just the same as last time you did it. Difference in people, they don't want it the same as last time. As we said, they're looking for new ways,
Mm.
difference, variety again. And so you can understand when you understand how these differences exist in people, then you can understand how this could cause a lot of friction in relationships. If one person wants routine and the other person craves change, well, you can obviously see where the friction is going to exist. As
Mm.
we said before, neither is wrong, but without awareness, they're going to drive each other mad. So if they can begin to understand each other's ways of viewing circumstances and viewing the world, they're going to have common ground to come together.
That's right. And it opens the door for a conversation to figure out, okay, well, clearly this is you and this is me over here. Where can we, if I'm the type of person who likes sameness, where can we introduce a bit more of that novelty, variety, spontaneity? And where can we introduce a little bit more of this sameness and, familiarity so that we're both getting what we want
Yeah,
and need?
yeah, that's the
Mm.
key, isn't it? So that both have a degree of satisfaction in the outcomes.
That's right. I think we hear a lot especially in personal relationships, we hear the word compromise. Now, I don't
Mm.
know if I would use the word compromise. I think this just comes back to communication, being open, willing to have a conversation, even if it might be a little bit of a tough conversation.
Yes, compromise has the connotation that you're giving way, which a lot of people feel that they're being shortchanged then. But
Yeah,
really, it's more about making allowance for people, and this is what we've been talking about in these two podcasts, isn't it?
that's right.
To just begin to understand uh, another person's the way other people approach things. Then we're building bridges. We're not
That's
burning
right.
bridges.
That's right. Yeah. So, number five, the last one we'll go through today, big picture versus detail. So, asking, do you want the overview or do you want specifics? So, big picture people, they might say something like, just give me the gist, right? I just want the overview, give me a high level. Whereas detail people might say, well, when exactly is this happening or do you need this? Who's responsible for this? What's step one? What are all the steps in between? So, this is probably one of the most common misunderstandings that we see in leadership, in project work, maybe even personal relationships or parenting. Mum and I are very different, aren't we, Mum? Like you're very much a big picture. Your meta program sits in the big picture side of things,
Mhm.
ideas, and hey, we could make this happen, or what about this? And I'm the one sitting there going, all right, well, how do we get started on that? Who do we need to help us with this? What does the back end of this look like? And we've even seen how we can clash with this, haven't we? Because I'm like, hang on,
Yeah.
slow down. I need some time to get this ready, and you're on to the next thing, right? So if we don't stop to understand this particular part of things, then it can cause frustration, it can cause misunderstandings, it can even cause conflict, right? So, what happens when these filters clash, like the example that I've just given you? So, let's say that you're giving instructions to your child, maybe to your staff, maybe you're sharing information with a partner. Now, you're big picture, you're options driven, and you're an internal person. And on the other hand, they might be detail focused, procedures first, and an external person. So you might say something like, just make sure it gets done, right? Use whatever approach makes sense to you. And they're sitting there thinking, well, what exactly is expected here? What's the right way? You've said use an approach that makes sense, but what's the right way to do this? And can you check it when I'm finished? Because I want to make sure I've got it right. So we could actually think that this is that person, whether it's the child, the team member, the partner, we could think that it's them misbehaving or them being difficult or even pessimistic. But it's likely not that at all. It's simply a misalignment of these filters.
I think that's a really important thing to consider, isn't it? Sometimes when we see people behaving in a way that we think or we judge to be bad behavior, maybe it's not bad behavior. Maybe it comes down to a lack of understanding about what's going on for them. And so I think this is why what we've been talking about today is so important. It's to try and get a handle on and understand someone's meta programs because this gives us influence. We can lead better, we can parent better, we can listen better, we can be a better partner. We can actually speak to people in a way that's going to land with them or in a way that they're going to understand and respond to. And so here's something that I think we can apply in real time. And let's go back to what we did last week. Let's put this into practice.
Mhm.
So, think of someone, a relationship that you have, maybe it's at work or a personal relationship, where things just don't feel quite as smooth as they could. It feels a little bit clunky. So ask yourself, focus on yourself, not on what the other person's doing, but ask yourself, are they more toward or away from the desired outcome? Do they want options? Do they want to be left to figure it out themselves? Or do they need a clear process from you? And that last one we talked about, are they big picture? Do they see the end result or do they see all the details leading up to the result? So we're not diagnosing, we're not labeling, we're not judging. We're just getting curious about their internal processes. So we can have that desired outcome of better communication with them. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to flex. We're trying to be flexible. We want to give information in a way that suits their style, not ours. And it could be just as simple as saying to someone, here's a simple step-by-step procedure to achieve this outcome. Or let's look at a few creative ways that we can tackle this that would work really, really well for a person that likes options and likes to come up with some ideas themselves.
All right, so let's recap here. Today, we've looked at the hidden patterns behind how people interpret the world, meta programs. We've explored five of the most impactful ones. So that toward versus away from, internal versus external, options versus procedures, sameness versus difference, and big picture versus detail. And as we've mentioned a few times, none of these are right or wrong, better than the other. They're just different ways that we process information and different ways that we think. So we've also talked about what happens when those filters can clash, how it's a misalignment, and how to start spotting them, not to judge, but to connect. And this is why we talk a lot about awareness, because it's only when we're aware of meta programs or representational systems, anything that we're talking about, that we're in a position that we can make a choice to respond differently or make a change.
Yes, and today we've given you some practical ways that you can actually use this because remember, it's great to listen to information, but it's only when we take action that it can really have or make any meaningful difference in our life. So remember, pick a relationship that you have with someone, notice the filters and flex your approach, even if it's just slightly, and just watch and see what shifts in that, in the way that you interrelate with each other. So, in our next episode, we're going to explore what happens when conversations get emotional. Now, this is the tricky part, isn't it? We all, if you're anything like me, you might try and avoid these conversations because the stakes are high. You're under pressure, and it feels like nothing you say is landing because the emotions are running high. So, we'll show you how to be heard and hear others when it really counts. So, thanks for listening to the Brain Changes podcast today. Once again, if you know anyone who you feel that this episode would be particularly beneficial to, please share it with them because we know how much it can help everyone.
That's right. And remember to follow and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And as always, we'd love for you to leave us a comment or a review on how this has helped you or even what you've taken from the episode. It helps more people find us, and we really appreciate that. Okay, so that is it for today. Thanks again for joining us. And until next time, remember, when you change your mind, you change your life. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Brain Changes. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation today. Please like and subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest episodes. Our mission is to reach as many people as possible to help them revolutionize the way they think so they can change their brain and create profound transformation. Please help us broaden our reach by sharing this episode with someone you know will benefit. And remember to tag us on socials at Moonbeam Monday and leave a review. And remember, when you change your mind, you change your life. We'll catch you next time for another episode of The Brain Changes.